Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cacawphony. I am your host, Wolf, and I am joined by...
Uh, Ruby.
I am the Senate.
I'm Ted or Alive too.
Lad.
And we are here, ladies and gentlemen, with a few... And so, well, I messed that up. I wanted, ladies and gentlemen, to bring on everyone with us who covered RWBY Volume 7. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to get everyone due to scheduling conflicts and other issues, so instead, I picked out your favorites and the very best of that group. So, as said, we're here to cover one last time RWBY Volume 7 and our overall general thoughts on the show, on Volume 7 specifically. So with that said, let's jump straight into things and talk about what are your general thoughts on RWBY Volume 7 now that we've had a bit of time with it? Did you like and enjoy it or no? And if so, for either, why? Who would like to start us off?
I can go first. I thought that Volume 7 was one of the best volumes yet. It had some of the best moments of the entire series. It had some of the most interesting, plot and development of both the setting and the characters. It had some amazing fight scenes. I just thought it was really top tier as far as RWBY goes.
Yeah, I would agree on the fact that I very much enjoyed Volume 7 and the things that Ted previously mentioned. I don't agree with all of the things that went down, but the fact that I enjoyed it and enjoyed the journey, even if I didn't always agree with some of the character decisions, I think speaks volumes about what I think the effort that went into this volume.
It's Volume 7s.
Yeah. I can't. Is my mic working?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit on the quiet side, but you're all right.
Trying to use a headphone mic over here.
Yeah, so I thought that Volume 7, it was very interesting. Now, the middle is where I have a bit of a problem, but the start, I think, is great, and the ending is probably the best since Volume 3, which is very good. It was a great volume overall, but I do have some reservations with the middle.
Okay. And Ruby? Ruby may be having a few issues, so I'll jump in and go next while Ruby figures that out possibly. So for me, I will slightly differ from Dylan in saying that I think, overall I think RWBY Volume 7 was good, was very enjoyable, and and I'll agree with Ted, I think it's some of the best RWBY we've gotten in quite some time. Possibly the best volume so far. This is RWBY at its strongest it's ever been, I feel. With that said, I do think, in my opinion, I think RWBY Volume 7's finale is its weakest. I think Volume 7's finale suffers from a problem that I personally think is very familiar to RWBY in so much as RWBY moves too fast for its own good. And I think Volume 7's finale does suffer from that somewhat. But overall, still very enjoyable, still very good.
Yeah, it's not Volume 5.
I like Volume 5.
Same.
Yeah, but it is the weakest of all the volumes that aren't in the
Volume 1.
Yeah, not counting the first two, which you can sort of give because they were starting out. But since Volume 3, it is the weakest. And I think Volume 7, it's hard to rank. It could be the best, but also, RWBY's a really interesting show to rank because a lot of the fan base, we understand that there are a lot of restrictions, and what we want RWBY to be is sort of sometimes impossible because we don't want to kill RWBY.
Unlimited crunch time. Do that.
What are your thoughts, RWBY? Overall thoughts?
I enjoyed the volume. There was multiple like up and downs parts. A lot of what you guys already have said is pretty much covered all the words I should said. But there was like some things that I saw and noticed that were like super cool, and I never thought RWBY would ever take it that way, and I was glad they did. And then there were some that I was like, I feel like a lot of this volume, and I think why it gets a lot of praise, is it sort of followed the path that no one really ever thought. Like there were some people who got the guess, but I feel like majority of people didn't expect how everything was going to turn out.
Okay. If that's everyone's overall general thoughts, let's move into something a bit more specific and jump into what are 2 things that you really liked and enjoyed seeing from this volume. This can be a bit of animation, a particular scene, music, anything in particular that really stood out to you as this is my favorite. And no, you can't say everything. That's cheating.
Oh, you heard that.
So who would like to go first?
I liked Ironwood, and you all know how I feel about the Generalissimo. I think his character, his rise and his fall is just the most compelling arc in this entire season.
Mm-hmm.
I think that RWBY might be the protagonist and the main characters, but he's sort of like a
He
big
stole the show for
centerpiece
Volume 7.
in this volume. And I also liked Penny. Penny was really good in this volume.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Penny returns and everything. Maybe I just have a predisposition for Atlas characters because also Weiss is best girl.
Of course, Senate would like the place that is currently under martial law and its highest, authority has completely taken over. Of course, the Senate would like that, that arc and those characters in that
order
particular
to
place.
ensure the security, Atlas will be reorganized into a new empire.
New.
Moving on.
Anyway.
Anyone else?
I really enjoyed most of the fights this volume,
Mm.
except for the ending few, which is basically I didn't like Juniper Neo.
Oh.
I enjoyed the chase scene, but the little interactions they have weren't that well done. I want to say, which I put down to they had to animate those rather quickly towards the end, and they couldn't get the polish the other stuff did. But overall, I think Ironwood Watts is one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Aesop's RWBY was great. There weren't as many fights, and you don't have, we didn't have a fight that has a lasting, impact. We don't have the Pyrrha Cinder or
what
the
about
Adam versus Bumblebee. So
what about Clover?
He's a side character. It's fine.
Dead right there.
Two things that I liked, 2 scenes in particular. One, the scene where Salem shows up and talks to Ironwood and goes, "Yo mama" to RWBY. That was fantastic. I mean, that entire scene was some of the best writing of the volume, maybe of that episode was one of the best in the entire series. Salem is just so amazingly well written in all of her scenes. She's such a great villain. I mean, a lot of her scenes, I saw a whole analysis of how that her first scene in Volume 4 with the rest of Team Witch made Voldemort look like a wannabe. She just is so, anybody who wants to write cool, intimidating villains really needs to study Salem.
I think it's Jen Taylor who does the voice, right? Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
I think she lends
Cortana.
a lot of credence to that as well. She's exceptionally good at doing the voice for Salem. Honestly, I kind of, the voice she gives to Salem, I think, and the acting she puts behind that just lends so much more credence to the character. And if she wasn't there, it would take a lot from it. And I think it's, I don't remember his full name, but Alex, one of the people who work on the soundtrack, I think, the soundtrack for Salem that he's created for her and a lot of the backing music you'll hear within the scene she's in also tends to lend a ton of credence to her scenes as well. everything comes together when they write and do anything for Salem. Like, it's just exceptionally well done. So I agree with you.
There are many villains in RWBY, but there is only one super villain. And you know what sets apart super villains?
Presentation.
Exactly.
What's your next one, Ted?
The other scene I wanted to talk about was RWBY versus the Aesops, which I just think was a fantastic fight scene and worked so well, especially, in context. We've talked about the possibility of doing like individual episodes where one of us does a shorter episode on a particular topic. If we go through with that,
Spoilers. You're not supposed to
was a
tell
secret. That was a secret. First
Not
I've
really.
heard of it. Anyway, so if we go through with that, I'm definitely going to do an episode on that fight, because what I think was great about it is it's a step up for RWBY. This is the first time they've gone in a like equal numbers, 1-on-1 or 4-on-4 fight against huntsmen who are sort of at a higher level than them, or at a higher level than we thought they were. They've taken on Hazel. Blake and Yang fought against Adam, but this is the first time it's been equal numbers against sort of a higher tier, and they won. And some people have complained that, like, oh, RWBY shouldn't have been able to beat them, but every single aspect of how they won was set up either earlier in this volume or earlier in a previous volume. Every major beat of the fight where RWBY turned it against the Aesops, you can trace the origin of that. Why they were able to do that.
Yeah, I think people saying that RWBY shouldn't have been able to beat the Aesops. It's like, well, they weren't at full strength. They didn't have Clover. And what did Clover say? What would you guys do without me?
Huh.
So, yeah, they'd lose to Team RWBY. That's what.
Yeah, just in addition to being a very cool, very high energy fight with very impressive animation, we know how they won.
I would be interested to hear that video, because I'll probably make you a little bit mad later on this episode. But until then, RWBY, what are your what are two favorite things?
My 2 cents.
Yeah, your 2 cents.
I really enjoyed the sort of last Ozpin's monologue over the last episode. I really liked how the music sort of built up and really added character, how we got Ozpin's like sort of World of Remnant voice back from those lore episodes, and how it just kind of mixed well, and you could just feel the whole tension like just resonating through you. It was just so cool. And then we got to see Oscar doing his thing with his bubbles. Just awesome. And then I also really liked Weiss throughout this volume. Like, she wasn't like a full main character, but I liked how she was just sort of like, it was funny Weiss throughout the whole volume.
She had a lot of good moments this one as well. Like the Shnees too, kind of. Ironwood and the Shnees themselves, to a degree, I think, stole this volume. I think from most people.
Yeah.
That'd be a
and
safe
I think
bet.
you almost have to, because it's their home.
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. All right. Is that all?
Yeah.
All right, then. I will go and say that I will copy Ted ever so slightly and say that specifically the introduction, Volume 7, Episode 11, the Silver Eyes scene with RWBY and Salem, going Yo Mama to RWBY, that was definitely one of my favorite scenes, because everything about that, especially with the parallels to the previous Silver Eyes scene we saw back in Volume 6, I love that. It was shot exceptionally well. Everything about that was done exceptionally well, and that was just a great moment for not only Salem, but as well as RWBY, too. Like, it was just exceptionally well done on their part. And another favorite moment, I think, would have to be a bit of a tie between either Oscar and Oscar telling Ironwood everything, as well as the kind of talk, the talk they have, and getting just that little bit of glimpse into what the show, I feel, is setting up for, what Ozpin's potential failures were and why Ozpin didn't succeed, and the idea of fear and stuff like that, and setting that up for the ending. I think it's either that or it goes to I loved when we see in the finale, and I know I talked about not liking the finale, but I think one of my favorite scenes from the finale was definitely getting to see Winter hurt and telling, her, even in that state, telling Weiss, go. I'm not, I'm giving you a head start. And just the emotion behind that, the scene itself, all the animation, everything else behind it, and everything that went into that scene, I have to give credit to everyone who worked on it because I think it's exceptionally well done because you can really tell and see the hurt and the conflict within Winter in that moment. Like, especially, the VA work, everything, it's just done exceptionally well. So that too is a great scene from Winter. But that's it for me. If everyone is done with this topic,
I'll just toss in a little one. I
Sure.
liked in the finale when we found out Watts was alive because it meant I didn't have to eat a stapler.
this is true.
One last thing. I actually, this is half a meme, half not, but my favorite scene in the finale is when Ironwood shoots Oscar. Because it is such a, like, it is such a heavy and dramatic scene. And I think that it seems like it's a very swift and fluid motion for Ironwood to just snap almost when he draws the revolver. Like, he gets a quick draw. And
Sure.
he's just totally broken in that moment. And his voice actor, props to him so much.
Oh, I wish I remember his name.
The weight he brings to the role.
Is it Jason? I cannot remember his full name. It's Jason something, is it not?
Helena's gonna kill me for not knowing.
Helena, she's gonna
She'll
kill
kill us
all of
all.
us. Every last one of us.
I will quickly look it up.
Jason, it says Jason Rose.
Yeah, I think that's it. Let me quickly look it up.
General Ironwood, there's too many of them. What are we going to do?
No.
Yes.
Anyway,
Jason
I
Rose,
start
you're right.
blasting.
Anyways, moving on. But it is Jason Rose. Now Helena can't be mad at us. We did say it right. But what are 2 to 3 things that you didn't like this volume, that you had issues with? Who would like to start us off? This is the harder part.
I mean, I have some things, but I don't want to always talk first.
Go for it. You volunteered. You're up now. Go for it. You're first.
No. Well, I guess I did not like how little Juniper really had to do, or Junior really had to do in this volume, other than mainly side gags and because what they did do with Ren and Nora, I think was some of the best stuff they did for both characters. Like what little, when Nora's calling Ironwood out, or when Ren is emotional about his choices, especially in the finale. The fact that those things were there, but it didn't seem like they were focused on as much as they could have been, made me a little sad. Also, the fact that they totally got punked on by Neo when they were fighting her 4-1. And also,
Neo seems to be like the strongest character out of anyone. It's weird. She's
I
made
swear,
of
yeah.
metal.
right? Also, and I will take a little bit of flack for this, but sometimes I think that, like, at least the way I read the show, it's like only RWBY, the team, has a monopoly on what is right. If that makes any sense in this show.
I get you. I get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. And that protagonist-centered morality and the dismissal of other people's points of view is something I don't quite find endears me to the characters going into the finale.
That's understandable.
Like, it doesn't seem like RWBY gives Aesop's or Ironwood, like Clover and them guys, they don't see them necessarily as people who are trying to do what they think is right. I think that they're sort of. I just hope that they haven't written them off. Oscar didn't write Ironwood off, and that's something I really liked about Oscar and Ozpin. But I hope that like Team RWBY doesn't like write off people who don't agree with them.
He didn't write him off at least until he shot him.
I'd probably feel pretty bad if I got shot, especially because of the old man in my head and not because of anything I necessarily did. Although Oscar did totally lose the lamp, so imagine Oscar telling Ironwood that.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been great. He definitely would have shot him at least twice at that point, not just once.
Double tap.
But who would like to go next?
I mean, I can rant about a specific scene first, and
Sure.
I'll come back later. So now we're going to the all controversial Clover, Crow, and Tyrion fight. Now this is an animation thing, not anything about the story. The problem I have is how the scene is set up, where Tyrion gets wrapped up, Crow's sword is put in an area we presume to be behind Tyrion. Crow runs over, and it looks like quite a run, and Clover somehow doesn't notice until he's punched. Clover is then thrown the complete opposite direction of Crow's sword, and then Crow and Clover talk. Tyrion somehow gets out of being wrapped and unnoticed, goes over to the sword, somehow runs around Crow, ends up behind Clover without them noticing, and stabs Clover. It's the story I don't have a problem with, but the execution is just not clean. It's all blocky. Things are not in the right position for it to act clean. Like you think, like if you drew a map of where everything actually is, you'd go, "How did this end up happening?" Like our
Like the map.
the characters went blind to not see Tyrion run up behind Clover.
That's
We
fair.
have seen
That's
him
completely
move
fair.
very fast.
It's like because the
Scuttled on the
last
ground like a
the last
scorpion,
we see
like-
Tyrion is wrapped up, and then suddenly he teleports behind Clover and stabs him.
Nothing personnel, kid.
Yeah, I'm like, what? It's like, how didn't you notice him getting up, running over, grabbing the sword, and then somehow getting behind Clover? Like, that's just my problem. It's like,
No, I think that's completely fair.
because they're in an open area. Like, either Crow would have seen it because Tyrion was behind Clover, or Clover would have seen it because Tyrion had to move behind him somehow. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. They had to have a different environment for this to happen. It couldn't have been in an open area. Like, if they were next to like the exploded ship, and Tyrion pops out from behind the ship, like then that's fine. But you're in an open, snowy area. Like, what did they say? Did they say Tyrion's white clothes blended into the snow?
To be fair to Tyrion, don't birds have a thing where like they're slightly blind or they have a blind spot going on? Like, isn't that a thing for birds?
Yeah, but he's a human. He's not actually a bird.
What do you
You
know?
don't know
Maybe
what
he.
Oscar's magic did to him.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Maybe that's the reason that's complaining. Like
Tomato
maybe
bird,
he now
Ruby.
enjoy bird seed as a
bird.
food or something.
Who would like to go
Wanna move
next?
on?
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
I only have one, which I think is a good problem to have, but
Sure.
it did bother me that a couple of times we had sort of cliffhangers at the end of an episode that then went nowhere or were like completely resolved in the next episode. And the fact that they kind of did it like, I think 2 episodes in a row where we had the riot and then in the next episode it's fine. And then we had a grim attack and the next episode it's fine.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Mm.
I think a couple of the earlier volumes having pacing issues, watching them week to week, but then it was a little better if you watch it all at once. I think volume 7 is going to be the other way around, where that becomes really noticeable if you sit down and watch the entire thing. But if you watch it week to week, it kind of seems okay. Well, okay, we got this cliffhanger. I'm excited for the next week. Okay, well, they didn't do much with it, but I've got the episode right now, and I think it's going to become really noticeable if you sit down and watch the entire thing.
Yeah, they have the riot happen, and then they skip to the aftermath of the riot.
And then
And
at the end of that episode, they have the Grim attack, and then they skip to the aftermath of the Grim attack.
Yeah, so it's like, these things have happened, but we don't see them. We just get told that they happened. And they kind of don't change much either.
Right.
Yeah,
It's all just building tension to, and then finally when Watts turns off the heat, that's when things boil over. He turns off the heat, but things boil over. Ironic.
Haha.
Boo. Ruby, what would you like? Anything you would have, Dad? What would your 2 moments be, Ruby?
Almost all of mine have already been taken, but I also didn't I like the build-ups. Well, like the cliffhangers was exciting, and especially the week to week was like building tension. But I just felt like it was a lot of the just like, and the battle's over. Like we didn't get to see the whole like it seemed like it was building up to something big, and it was just could have just like nothing really exciting happening, and like how it happened back to back. It was like, oh well, that was anticlimactic. Maybe that was just to focus on the characters more than the battles, but I kind of wanted to see the battles. And I guess I don't know. The only thing that's standing out to me right now is how Juniper just left Oscar in that running hall scene. Like they clearly saw he wasn't keeping up, and they just left him. Like you guys know better than that.
Poor farm boy. Always left
Junior
behind.
Bad friends.
And looking at Volume 6, yeah, everyone's a bad friend to Oscar, really?
Really, yeah. I mean, like
maybe not Ruby at this point, but that's debatable.
That
also.
Catch a break.
My two least favorite moments. The first one, like I said, I'm probably gonna make Ted a little bit mad with. I didn't enjoy the Aesop's fight, and that's not from a. It's. I dislike using this phrase. It does partially come from a. This doesn't feel earned, right? But I don't use that phrase to mean this doesn't feel earned for the characters. I use that phrase in reference to myself as a viewer. To me as a viewer, it doesn't feel earned, if you understand what I mean by that. And I think this comes back in part to that issue of, Ruby moving too fast for its own good. I think that plays a part here as well, because I feel like everything this fight sets up and does is undone by another least favorite moment of mine, which is Salem showing up at the end. I feel like not having Salem show up at the end of this volume could do a lot more for you, especially with this scene and everything it sets up, if you have Salem instead show up sometime later in Volume 8. Because that gives us more time to see the conflict between Ironwood and Ruby and the Aesops and all of that. Like, to see those conflicts unfold and where they go with it. And now that doesn't matter anymore. All of that's put to the side. Seeing humanity tear itself apart is now completely gone when we have Salem there with big fuck-off giant Jellywell Grim.
That seems like kind of an assumption. I mean, they're
true.
Even if they want to, like, even if they recognize that Salem is the bigger threat, it's not going to be easy for them to just completely set aside all of the conflict they've had with each other.
This is absolutely right. And I do want to say, right, like, Volume 8 could absolutely change my mind and opinions on this. But I do have to judge Volume 7 for what I have right now. I can't, I can't base it too much off conjecture, right? And I'm trying not to. And based off what I have right now, I feel like it does take away to have Salem show up when she does within Volume 7. And I feel like it would have been better if I don't want to say better, it would have been different, and I think I would have gotten more enjoyment from it, me personally, if she didn't.
Salem showing up right when she does, to me, totally justifies Ironwood's panicked reaction, in my opinion.
I mean, it absolutely does. Like, there's things it works for, but I feel there's things that, to me personally, it takes away from or doesn't necessarily work as well for.
Other issues that there were people who, I mean, I thought this was kind of ridiculous, but there were people who thought she was lying and she was actually going to Vacuo. I thought that was kind of a ridiculous assumption,
I mean,
but
I'm one of the people who said that because, and I said it because I felt like it's a possibility of, it lines up with the whole misdirection and, I like, the whole misdirection and, manipulation thing from the background stuff that Salem loves to do, right? Like, hey, I'm coming for you. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. You continue to fight and tear yourselves apart because that's what you're already doing.
See, what that would mean is that the first chapter of the new RWBY sequel book is just, and then everyone was dead.
I mean, they could do that.
it could
One
happen
chapter.
before. The book starts, everything's fine, and then like 3/4 of the way through, hey, what's that?
Everyone
Is that
died.
a whale?
In the sky.
Who's
I did
that
want to ask
writing
though.
it?
So, if you feel that the RWBY sort of fight with Aesop's isn't earned, what do you think would earn it?
See, I don't. I would love to hear. I'm going to also, I'm going to also hype up your little thing for what we plan on doing in the future. I would love to hear it because I would be curious to hear a more in-depth approach to this fight because I honestly don't know what I think would make it feel more earned. I think maybe I want to say maybe a bit more time devoted to building up everything that supposedly sets the stage for Ruby beating Aesop's, because I feel like I didn't notice enough of that maybe, and maybe I'm just
well, that
blind.
is the main thing I'm intending to focus on is how they pulled this victory off.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to see more cracks in the friendship between RWBY and Aesop's in the episodes prior.
Mm-hmm.
Is a character thing.
Well, the problem is that you have 13 episodes, so you got to develop the friendship and then deconstruct that friendship a little. And you can't really do that in 13 episodes where you got to introduce those characters, help them become friends, and then you got to also have everything else happening as well.
Of course, the Aesop's say they aren't friends.
This is true. And that's kind of the only thing you get between them and RWBY, right? And it's interesting because I think, it's supposed to be that kind of build-up of these are the mentors and they learned from them and now they've beaten their mentors because they disagree on the morality of what's being set up. It's an interesting dynamic, and it's a good dynamic that many other shows have done and taken and used, and I think RWBY doesn't do it, poorly. I just don't feel the fight for me as a viewer is necessarily earned. Not so much for the characters, but I feel as a viewer, I don't know if I entirely like the fight and how it's set up because of, I just feel it moves through everything too quickly.
Well,
I really don't know how to explain this. I'm being terrible with this, I know.
Well, there's also the thing that the Aesop's are just other huntsmen.
Mm-hmm.
They're not exactly, besides for Harriet and RWBY, you don't really get that they are opposites of the character they would fight later.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not the whole, like, you see this in other shows where they just have the polar opposite, and that's the enemy of the character or someone they have to get over. But the Aesop's are not opposites to RWBY, they're just different. So it's harder to make it a compelling fight, and that's really the thing of it's hard to make a fight compelling when you introduce the characters in episode 1 and they fighting episode 12?
Yes.
And then Clover dies.
So yeah, you have 11 episodes to build up to that, but those 11 episodes are not all focused on getting to that one fight. The 11 episodes are focused on developing Ironwood, getting the Schnees and the election, getting Robin Hill into the
Oh yeah,
story
she's
and
another thing I disliked. I forgot. I don't like Robin at all.
I actually do have problems with Robin as well, as in
you both
she didn't
kicked.
really
Both
she
get out
didn't
of my
really-
show.
my problem with Robin is she didn't really connect with the audience at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only connection, like, oh, she has nicknames for everyone. What a cool gimmick! It's like, no.
No, I mean, maybe this is like only a certain subset, but I know a certain group of people very much liked Robin, and that group of people is lesbians.
Calling out specific users here on the Crow's Nest. I hope they
just
listen to
think
this.
That, like, someone brought up something interesting to me in a Reddit thing. It's like you were giving state secrets, like when Blake and Yang tell Robin about the plan. You're giving state secrets to an unknown variable and hoping that it won't blow up in your face. I mean, I don't know. I don't. Have
You're
a
right.
lot
That's
of-
fair.
I mean,
I don't have a
and
lot
I
of
don't
respect
think that
for
the show
vigilantes.
necessarily portrayed that as, okay, that's definitely right. Like, I mean, I think you said earlier that RWBY kind of monopolizes the morality, but I think they did make decisions in this volume that were questionable, and that the show didn't just say, yeah, this is definitely right.
Mm-hmm. And they were called out on it to a degree. It's just the problem is they were called out on it in a moment of, oh, Ironwood's doing the evil, like he's the bad guy now.
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah,
So
that's
maybe,
why
that wasn't the best time to call them out on it, right? But they weren't wrong for being called out on it. They did make a mistake there. They did screw up. And their mistake that they made did cost them their trust with Ironwood. All of the mistakes they made did cost them their trust with Ironwood, and did make Ironwood more easily and more willing to distrust them in the first place for everything that they did choose to do. So, it's their distrust that led to his distrust, but it's not
self-fulfilling prophecy.
entirely framed that way. It's still more framed of Ironwood doing the evil, not as much RWBY. So it's hard to really, I get what they're going for. I agree with what they're doing, but it's hard to really see that at times, I think. It's hard to really focus in on that, and how do you hammer in on that exactly of, this is RWBY's mistake that caused all of this, right? It didn't, again, like you could say, well, there's other things here and there that played a hand, but they definitely played the biggest hand of, yeah, we made this mistake. And it's really, it's not exactly completely easy to see that. But I think, going back to the Aesop's fight before we finally move on, I'll say that maybe, I think part of my issue might come again to that RWBY moving too fast for its own good thing, because I'm one of those people, right, who, I would have loved just an entire Volume 7 dedicated to setting up Aesop's and RWBY and just all the other little small things, and not having our big fight between RWBY and Aesop's until Volume 8, and then seeing Salem arrive and say later half of Volume 8 or Volume 9 even. Like I've said before, right, in the past, where if it was me and I was doing what I wanted to do and what I would most want to see, the first half of Volume 5 would have been a whole volume in and of itself. The later half of Volume 5 would have been Volume 6, and the first half of Volume 4 would have been one volume into itself. The later half of Volume 4 would have been Volume 5. The first half of Volume 5 would have been Volume 6, and so on and so on, right? I would have loved that way more.
But I think you understand why they can't do that.
Absolutely, right. I absolutely understand why they can't do that and everything else. And I completely, understand, like, I can't judge the show for that too much. And it's absolutely, hard for them to be able to, do that and everything else. And I completely understand why. So
Clearly, they should have just stolen Genlock's budget.
What they did, RWBY killed Genlock now. Genlock had to.
There can be only one.
Genlock had to run away and get funding from elsewhere after RWBY killed it. But yeah, moving on. A look to the future. Is there anything you would expect to see or would love to see from Volume 8?
I want to see an actual fight with Salem. I think it's the right time for, and I mean, they wouldn't win. there's a number of ways it could go. They could just lose completely. They could like kind of pull off some semblance of a victory that ultimately, doesn't like defeat her forever.
Semblance.
But yeah, but I think it's time for Ruby to actually fight Salem.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
If Yang punches the whale in the nose, what happens?
It spews water out of the top.
There's
You know that
many jokes
Grim
there.
that Blake kills in Volume 4, the dragon serpent,
Mhm.
actually comes out of the blowhole.
There's a lot of jokes here that could be made. I appreciate your fortitude in not making the worst jokes.
Well.
Anyone
what
else?
happens is Penny and Pietro get eaten.
No. Oh, well, okay, that's fine. That's completely fine.
They just get eaten.
Wait
and
a
then
minute,
get
they
put out.
stole that from Jonah and VeggieTales.
Or the original
Mhm.
Pinocchio.
That's
Pretty
what they
sure
would-
it was from VeggieTales. I want to see
Yeah.
so much more with Ironwood and the Schnees next volume. But then again, the problem, like Wolf said, I think, is that Salem takes over the attention and the plot when she gets there, in my opinion. And that's not bad. That's what she should do. But it just feels like the human conflict has to be pushed to the side by comparison. So,
Mhm.
Go ahead.
I mean, my meme fantasies are that Ironwood declares himself a new Kaiser and, becomes the autocrat he was born to be. My even bigger hopes are that he redeems himself in his either through death or something else like Darth Vader. Because as I've laid out to my friends before, this is both a cyborg, a fallen hero, a general, and someone who has willingly participated in violence towards children.
But is he the chosen one?
I'm pretty sure he's the chosen one. Look at that beard. Look at that beard.
Has a point.
But I just do hope that the human conflict between people like Whitley, and the Schnees, people like Ironwood and Ruby, I want the Aesops to return in a big way in Volume 8 because I think that, that rivalry is still something interesting. So I hope that in Volume 8, oh yeah, I also hope that Juniper gets some sort of win because the Neophyte boy,
I think
they
it's.
got bodied.
I'll wait. Dylan and Ruby, which of you would like to go next?
I shall.
Go ahead.
So you guys heard about the shows they're having in between the volumes, correct?
Yeah, we have a new show about the different little fairy tales of Ruby coming, and we have a D&D show, I believe, and it's what's the third one?
Behind
Behind
the
the
scenes.
scenes.
Behind the scenes, yeah, new behind the scenes.
Coming out in the opposite order of you said. So I feel like all the way back in the early volumes, we had sort of the allude to those fairy tales, and a lot of people in the fan base have made the connection to what has happened throughout the story to those quick fairy tales Pyrrha referenced when talking to Oz.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of hoping and predicting we might get some explanations to some things we've already seen or things to come in those fairy tales in its sort of world building it gives.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe get the more lore that the fan base seeks and the show doesn't always have time for.
Absolutely.
For Volume 8, I definitely see a fight with Salem. There's no way they can just ignore that and head off to Vacuo.
If they do that.
Be
If
the
they do, they're
biggest
just,
hypocrites in the world.
Oh, yeah.
they're just like, all right, we got to protect everyone. All right, bye. We're going to go hang out with Deep Sun.
We're gonna see Sun's abs. See you later.
High definition sun.
I mean, to be fair, it would definitely be a better prospect than, dealing with Salem. I will grant them that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're hypocrites because they were like,
Oh, no, they're
You
hypocrites.
can't leave people behind. Let's
not
go
saying
leave
they
people
wouldn't be.
behind, guys.
I'm not saying they wouldn't be. I'm just saying going to see Sun's abs is definitely a better prospect than fighting Salem.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Salem also has abs. We've not seen yet. We don't know. Maybe she does. And maybe her
Battle
abs
armor.
are better than Sun's. That's a possibility.
Black Sun is still the best, guys.
Oh,
Don't,
no.
Don't kill me.
What is this shit war? Oh no, we're gonna have a Blake brawl for all.
Anything else, Ruby?
Oh, it was just on the tip of my tongue. No, it's gone. All right, maybe if it'll come back to me once
Sure.
you guys have gone.
Dylan, you're up.
I want to see Blake and Ruby have an actual conversation. I'm hoping that happens.
Fair.
Like,
Fair.
come on, give them a conversation. I don't care about anything else. I just want to say this is the first time Blake and Ruby have a conversation. I hope they stick Blake and Ruby together for a few episodes, you know?
They
would
could
be
get
nice.
separated from the rest of the group, you know? That would be a fine time to have them do some stuff together.
Yeah, I know, but that's the joke answer. But my actual answer is I want more unique characters paired together for certain amounts of time. Give me Yang and John. Give me Nora and Weiss. Just give me some interesting character relationships.
Mm-hmm. It would always be nice. It's always nice to see, because I think RWBY does excel at those character interactions, right? Especially even the small ones to some of the bigger ones. They excel at doing that, and they especially excel at saying, you know, like you said, like Nora and Weiss. It's not a combination we've seen in the show at all, hardly, but if it is something they do, from what we've seen in the past with, like, say, Yang and Weiss, when the moments they've had, they do them exceptionally well. And it makes you want to see them do it for all of the characters, even though they more often than not can or don't at times. It makes you want to see it because, you know, they've done it so well in the past. I highly doubt they would mess this up as well, and it would be a lot of fun to see. So
I think
that's
Where did
kind
that
of
hug come from in Volume 6?
I think Blake, though, especially needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Because for 2 volumes, she was separated for the rest of the characters and off with her own cast.
Mm-hmm.
For 2 volumes, she was gone. And they haven't really done anything to build up her relationship with the others again.
Except for Yang.
They focus hard on, we got to make Blake and Yang good. But they forgot that Blake doesn't really have a relationship with anyone else either. Because
He used to have, I think, a good dynamic with Weiss, if I remember the early volumes.
yeah, in the early volumes it was, but it's been, you know, when was the last time they really had something like end of Volume 1, Volume 2, and
Well, they
and
had some
Volume
moments
3?
here in Volume 7 as well, and I think they still, you know, have shown a dynamic between Blake and Weiss at this point, depending on how you want to look at some scenes, right? I mean, again, Blake and Weiss held hands. Blake and Yang haven't held hands. Bumblebee.
I thought
Not
they,
true.
They
Yes,
have.
they have. It's a
All
pretty
lies.
significant scene.
All lies. Didn't happen.
I think Yang and Blake, they're doing more than holding hands there, Wolf.
Yang cannot flirt her way out of a paper bag. Blake and Weiss don't even need to flirt. They've already held hands. No interaction needed. So therefore, Bumblebee is dead.
oh god, we're all gonna die.
Run!
Um,
The flames are
I
coming.
can hear them calling.
I definitely agree. Like, it would be nice to see some of those different character interactions. That'd be a lot of fun to see. And I would be interested to see,
Wouldn't it be
right?
hard?
I mean, it depends on what they want to do. Again, like, if Ted, as
True.
Ted said, if they do split them up somewhat, you could split them up in a way where we have characters who've never been on screen together all that much, if at all, are now together and have to learn to work with one another a bit. You know, for a half an episode or a quarter of an episode, you could see something like that going on and happening, and that'd be a nice character moment and a way to see that relationship between those two characters in that small scene. That could absolutely be something you could do, that they could do, and it not take away from anything or be hard for them to do. I'm personally interested to see exactly how Volume 8 ships out and, you know, starts and everything, because it's very interesting, because we do have Salem there at the end of Volume 7, so the expectation going in is going to be that Volume 8 is going to be more front heavy with its action, right? And I don't think you'd necessarily be wrong with that expectation, but it'll be interesting to see if that's what they do. If we do have all the confrontation with Salem and everything at the front, I'm curious, what are we going to do with the later back half? Where are things going to go, and how is that going to be for Atlas? Or, and will we move away from Atlas in Volume 8 and start on our way towards Vacuo or back to Vale, perhaps? It'll be interesting to see. And I think
they end up back in the house in Mistral.
Oh no.
It'll be interesting to see, right, if Ironwood, just fucks off completely and they're just gone and Atlas is just gone and it's just RWBY and Mantle versus Salem. There's a lot of potential interesting things going on here and going into Volume 8, and I'm curious to see how that reflects back on Volume 7 and if some of my opinions of Volume 7 might change because of that. Because it does feel like... Oh, go ahead.
It's also interesting that Crow and Robin are being held captive and Oscar is stuck on the ground. So it's like they can't really just fly away straight away because you've got two main characters still stuck relative
Split up the main
Mantle and
characters.
Atlas. Oh, no, you can't do that.
I mean,
remember what happened
at
last
this point,
time?
they could do that, though, because at this point, like, our main cast hasn't necessarily been split up. It depends on how much of a main cast character you consider Crow and Robin. But if they're just gone, that's not necessarily the end of the world, right? Oscar
needs to stick around.
Yeah, Oscar is, one that you can't necessarily do that with because of Osmond and everything going on with him, but Robin and Crow you could, and that not be the end of the world, and it not necessarily mean anything major. Again, there's a lot up in the air, and I'm very curious to see, because I feel like Volume 7 and Volume 8 are the most connected for how Volume 7 ends. I feel like, the other volumes, there is a continuation there, you can see it, but they do feel a bit more self-contained. I don't look at Volume 5 and say, okay, this leads in amazingly well into Volume 6, and Volume 6, it, super depends on everything that happened in Volume 5. It depends on it, but it's not so but it does feel a little bit more self-contained, Volume 6 does, and Volume 5 and Volume 4 and so on and so on. They all feel a bit more self-contained as to what's happened within them. Volume 7, however, feels like, especially for its last half and the finale, it hugely depends on Volume 8 and everything going into Volume 8, which is a bit of a first for RWBY, I feel.
Well, yeah, if you look at every other volume, you still have Volume 1 doesn't lead straight into Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Volume 2, it doesn't straight lead into Volume 3. And then Volume 3 definitely doesn't go straight into Volume 4. And then everything else is like, the closest we get is Volume 6 to 7, but even then, they just suddenly teleport across the ocean to
again, like, there's continuation, there's build up from one volume to the next, and there's things that continue over and plot lines and different little bits and character development, things of that. There are things that continue over into each volume, but everything, all the previous volumes, in my opinion, feel a bit more self-contained. You can watch them solely on their own and have a decent interaction with them and have something fun that everything is not completely wrapped up, but everything within that volume feels more or less like it was wrapped up, right? Volume 7, I feel what's going in from what the ending from it feels like, you have to have Volume 8 in order to complete it. Because if you don't, do certain things in Volume 8, then Volume 7 is going to go from being potentially one of the best volumes to possibly one of the worst volumes, because everything that needs to be wrapped up within Volume 7 and doesn't get touched on at all in Volume 8 is definitely going to be a very bad thing, in my opinion. Your story with Ironwood, Aesop, Salem being there, and, sort of sow the schnees a little bit, perhaps. Maybe you could argue that one maybe is already completed, more or less, and you could argue that one maybe isn't. But again, like, there's more continuation, I feel, between these two volumes, and more dependency on one another than anything previously we've seen from RWBY. So I'm interested
still
to
waiting
see if
on
they
the
can nail that.
I'm still waiting on the payoff for the Volume 5 after credit scene.
Wait, you mean the one with
Payoff.
the one with Raven?
Yeah.
What payoff would there be?
I don't know. That's why I'm waiting for it.
Payoff is
Show
that she
what
left.
happened.
You
Well,
know,
nothing
that's
happened. She left.
You have to wait 9 months
I
for
think
payoff for that.
All right,
I-
good joke. Clap, clap. That was good.
I am so certain they didn't talk. Everybody thinks they talked. I am positive they didn't talk.
Mhm.
But do you need to talk to? I'm not going to go there.
Or do anything else.
I know a joke you were getting ready to make. This is not a mature podcast. You know, we do want this to be able. Anyone else have anything that they would like to see or expect to see from the future?
More outfits.
No, are you trying to kill the animators?
Well, like, it doesn't have to be a whole thing, but I felt like, especially when they had the whole, like, fancy meeting and stuff, that they just kind of stayed in their battle gear. And I felt that was off because everyone
It's
dressed
a
up.
combat skirt.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm curious to ask, do you want to see another win for Ruby, or would you like to see Ruby very much lose this time? Not even a, well, maybe this sort of kind of one. Would you like to see everyone just absolutely, Ruby loses this fight?
I wouldn't want to see a sort of repeat of the losing at volume 3 level, because I think it would be like I don't think they're going to try and kill any of the main characters, because that would, I don't know, I feel like it would just not make sense. Maybe someone like Ironwood or something, but I think that how we talked earlier about how there might be sort of a half win that doesn't really mean anything, or sort of they just managed to survive by the skin of their teeth.
They lose, but they at least kind of pull off the thing that they absolutely needed to. Like maybe they get the relic away. Like one of the
relic
relics
won't do anything. The lamp
or the staff.
The staff is important, but they need Penny now, because what are they going to do with the lamp?
Right. I'm just saying they get it away from Salem, so that could mean getting Penny away, so Salem can't get the relic, or it could mean taking the relic and getting it away. I think they need some kind of a win. I think they're going to mostly lose.
Plan was, but they had to go that up.
Poor Ironwood.
Damn kids.
They care about people too much.
How dare they?
For one thing, I think they can't have, Mantle and Atlas just get completely massacred. I think if the entire kingdom, if like Salem just killed everyone, I think that would be too much.
Okay.
And the good thing is, most people, like, even if you just start attacking Mantle at first, most people have been evacuated from down there. Or
No,
somewhat.
not most, as far as I remember.
Well, there was a good, like, they're not all just sitting in their house.
An amount of people have been evacuated. We don't know if it's a
We're
majority or a
We're
minority,
nowhere
but we've
close to
definitely,
being finished.
we definitely evacuated some at least. So some people will live, just not all. If you're not one of these some, well, fuck you.
I would cringe like such an idiot if like the general gist of Ironwood's plan ends up being what happens. Like,
I told you so.
Yeah, I'd be very mean for wanting to see that, but
his dying breath is just everything happened according to what exactly he figured it would happen. In his dying breath, he's just big, flips the bird to Ruby, then dies.
Oh no, I've posted this little thing constantly to make people sad, is where he's like, "Oh, the mission, the nightmares, they're finally over." I want him to have a very dignified death, because I am like 80% certain he's going to die in the next volume.
Dignified, or goes out like an absolute hero and a badass would be my two wants for that. I think. I think
the last thing I want for him is to have the same ending as Leo.
I don't think that would
Like,
work. I don't
not-
think they could do that for him. I don't
Well,
think
that
it would
wouldn't work for Ironwood.
The same as, Team RWBY just up and leaving wouldn't work. Like, they really just can't do that for how they've written it so far. It wouldn't feel right or very good to watch, I feel. But, any other thoughts?
A possibly longer season episode number wise than we've had before.
Mm-hmm. That'd be nice. And I think that is something that we're possibly going to get from what they've talked.
Like maybe 16 episodes or something.
Oof, you want to kill them. No, fair, though. I would
just
love that,
go
too.
to Texas and take over the studio.
How much was this last one? Well, there's no numbers.
No,
I think it was 13.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was 13. So it's just only 3 more episodes. They got it.
It's only Freebo.
16 very short episodes.
Back to
I
volume
guess
1
makes
levels
sense.
of times.
Oof. That would definitely not make people... Oof. Talk about
Back when
making people
John
upset.
was the main character. I'm kidding.
Well, if everyone's said their bit and has nothing
Bit.
left they want to talk about,
Bit.
I'm writing up that copy pasta tragedy of General Ironwood the Paranoid. It's gonna be everywhere one of these days.
everywhere.
No.
Well, with all of that said, that's been us. That's been us here at the Cacawphony. We hope you enjoy. If you like what you hear here and you want to talk with us or anyone else who's been on the show, come check us out at the Crow's Nest Discord. There'll be a link to that in the description below where you can join and chat with all of us here and about many different RWBY things, as well as RWBY fanfiction and other stuff fanfiction related, and many other things beside. We even have a Fate channel here.
No.
Who knows why? No Star Wars channel yet, unfortunately. Maybe
I'm
one day
working
we'll
on
get
it.
it.
Yet.
No, but we do have a D&D game that I run. Plug.
Shameless
Yeah,
showing on
You
my
people
show.
better
Too
come to
many
this
plugs.
thing.
This
I
is
woke
not
up
your
at
time.
7 a.m. for this.
As we said, with all of that said, we do hope you enjoyed. If you would like to chat with us, come to the Crow's Nest Discord. Tell us what you think about everything we talked about here, about our opinions, either in the comments below this video or on the Crow's Nest Discord. Until next time, take care.
Bleh.
Bye.
I have been the Senate.